So there's two sets of minutes. The first minutes are May 19th. Perhaps we can look at that. And then the next one is June 2nd. Those minutes. Are there thoughts or corrections? Acceptance of May 19th?
So moved.
Jim did a nice discussion. Jim did a nice job on that, I thought.
The minutes?
Yeah,
Well, I didn't have the transcript last time, which was tricky. So I feel like I probably missed more than.
so I guess Sonia moved to
Yes.
approve those ones.
Is there a second?
I'll second.
Brad seconds.
You can have that.
All those in favor? Aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Any abstentions? The next are the minutes of June 2nd. Any thoughts? Changes, corrections? Is there a motion?
I'll make a motion to approve.
Sam made the motion. Is there a second?
Second.
We have a second. Discussion, all those in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Any opposed, any abstentions? Great. Any additions or changes to the agenda?
Yes.
Ian has a change.
I think we should address this very generous offer from Jake Robertson to do some maintenance work on the trails in the forest.
What was his name again? Jake?
Jake Robertson, yeah. I think
I can look it up.
the email thread has been copied to everyone here.
Right.
This is easy.
Yeah, it's Jake Robertson. S-O-N.
That's the one.
We'll add that. We'll add it in. We'll add it in somewhere, yes. Any other additions, changes, deletions? Any public comment? Are there,
No report from Conservation Commission.
I do, are we there yet?
Yep,
Oh,
that's
public
fine.
comment. We're doing it slightly out of order.
I do
do
know I
have-
screwed up. I'm sorry. Town plan or whatever, yeah.
Yeah, I do have a few things, from RCC. They don't need to be covered today necessarily, but I had, a few meetings to catch, the Conservation Commission up on, just because we had sort of increased our frequency. And I also had to miss one of those meetings. So we had a discussion. There's nothing outside of sort of my reports back to RCC about this, committee, but after some discussion, I have a few thoughts and questions to pass along. Mostly just regarding the input process for the management plan. Since we've pushed that out to the end of the summer now, and RCC at some point would like to, get a hand on the ball. So the questions that RCC came up with were, what is the appropriate amount of time for RCC and RTC to look at the management plan? Can we clarify the process for how we're shipping that document out to other committees and to the select board? Like, what's the order there? Because I think there's some confusion over, like, does it go to RTC and RCC at the same time it goes to the select board? Or does the select board look at it first and then it's going to go to those other committees? And then also, of course, we're going to have the editor, or at least we hope to have an editor. So the other question was, when, basically RCC, it seems like the opinion was they can provide some feedback on the pre-editor version of the management plan, but they wouldn't necessarily be, like approving or recommending anything, I guess, until the editor has done the polish on it. And I think that some of that process is kind of, I don't know, a little bit nebulous anyway. Like, I don't think it's necessarily been set in stone exactly how the RTC and RCC are supposed to weigh in on the management plan process. So it just seemed like the general consensus was if there could be some level of clarification over what the expected process is for, I guess, just like timing and how we want that to look, you know, so that's kind of all I have to report. There was also some brief discussion about how we, you know, do we release things to the public again at some point in this process? You know, is this the type of thing that we have to hold a meeting for again, or can we just sort of post on Front Porch Forum and tell people like, hey, you know, if you want to see like the progress on the management plan, you know, go to the town site and look at the, you know, most current version. There was a little bit of discussion around that. Ultimately, we decided, I think the consensus is still among our RCC to try to not intrude while we're still in the process of, you know, kind of working through a lot of this like heavier stuff. You know, there's still a lot of pending edits. But since, you know, summers go fast in Vermont and, you know, it'll be August before we know it, they were just hoping for a little bit of clarification on what the expectations were once we kind of wrap up our draft of the management plan to the select board and sort of when they're expected to be able to look at it. So thoughts?
Yeah, couple of things. Firstly, I guess any individual on the Conservation Commission would be welcome to give comments. Obviously, speaking for the whole commission, you know, might be a different issue, but
Yep.
individually, I think we would welcome input if, you know, if so desired. The other thing is, I think maybe we could revisit this when we look at the RFP.
Okay.
Because the RFP as drafted and on our agenda covers the question of sort of the timing and the help from the writer person potentially for dealing with comments coming in.
Okay, great. I did mention to RCC, I had a similar opinion where I basically told everyone on that commission, if you have input, you're welcome to reach out, you know, to me or to, you know, the co-chairs or whatever. If you have feedback that you want to submit, you're, you know, nothing is stopping anyone from doing that individually. So people are aware that they can weigh in, but at the same time, I think it is a question of, you know, like right now, like the recreation section has a lot of comments. And so then sort of trying to, you know, weigh in on something that is like in flight might just make things a little bit more complicated. So yeah, they're aware that they can look at those documents and that we have a record on the town website and that they can weigh in with any of us individually if they, you know, want to give feedback. But I think there is still, yeah, and a desire for some clarity over what the end of this process looks like, you know, once we get to the end of the summer and we're, you know, having it presented to the select board and to the editor and whatnot. I mean, what's the order of operations? Just, I think it would be helpful for everyone, because I know that when we spoke to the select board, they didn't even really know what the process was. You know, we had asked, and then, you know, the question of RCC and RTC looking at the management plan came up, and they didn't know what the process was. And so it's kind of, so I think it, you know, it would be helpful if we just came up with a plan for that, because I think they're probably looking to us for that. Since last time, it seems like that's sort of the point of this advisory body, is to propose something to them, and then they can decide if they don't like it, versus ask them, well, how do you want us to do this?
Does feel like, and maybe this goes without saying, but input from them would be really valuable. You know, I feel like given the role of Conservation Commission, given the makeup, yourself included, I feel like their comments would be really worth taking some time to incorporate, even if that slows things down a little bit when it does.
And
when
I
we
would
get
add
close.
Trails Committee into that.
Yeah.
As well, that sentence.
Yeah, I can't imagine they're gonna have a heck of a lot of, yeah,
Okay.
I mean,
They
unless we're gonna like axe trails, I think they'll.
I mean,
I think
input
they're-
is input, right? I mean, I think especially based on the way that the structure of this committee is set up with the, you know, both the trails and the conservation representatives and recommendations, I do think that this committee does owe, you know, both of those other committees a chance to look at it and comment. And ultimately, we can take that feedback in and do what we want with it and then pass it on to the select board with whatever our finished product is. I think just because one or both committees likes or doesn't like the management plan doesn't necessarily mean we have to do everything they tell us to. But I do think that they're sort of, based on the structure, it seems like this committee was designed to get feedback from those bodies. So I think that certainly if RCC would love to look at it, and if we're going to have RCC look at it, I think RTC should as well.
Raises the issue of a Trails Committee representative on this committee, which is a vacancy right now. So question is, should one of us contact Trails Committee and say, hey, you're going to put somebody forward?
I've been poking around about that. It sounds like there's somebody who has been involved with trails. He's a hunter and potentially could be a candidate.
He's on the Trails Committee.
He's not on the Trails Committee right now, but I guess he's expressed interest in both.
Okay.
He's willing to
Great.
consider both. And I don't quote me on that, but that's my understanding of their current strategy for which Chase is still kind of like, yeah, I'll keep going. But he has to apply.
Yeah.
I don't know what, I think he's just telling me that, and he's probably more finished than
Right.
he's letting on.
So should one of us write to the Trails Committee or wait for them to take the initiative?
I don't think it would hurt if you guys just poked him.
Yeah.
Who, Hannah, is she the chair, right?
Yeah, so should I do that? Mike?
Sure.
Okay.
Yeah.
Does that answer the questions then for you, Sam, you think?
Yes and no. I mean, it sounds like maybe we were gonna revisit this during the RFP section. I just think we need an order of operations, like, is the plan, we finish our work and then it goes to the select board, and at the same time, we show it to RCC and RTC, because this is like still, a draft of the management plan. Like, hopefully it's very close to the finished draft, but it's still, or the finished document, but it is still a draft. So maybe at the same time, it goes to the select board, it goes to RCC and RTC, and then assuming there are no, well, I guess we'll get feedback from the select board, and then we'd get feedback from those other committees as well. And then if we need to make any more edits before it goes to the editor for like the polish, and then I suppose it would go back to all three of those committees again, like one more time, just so they can look at the final product and hopefully agree with it. I'm just proposing.
We can move on and come back to it. I
back.
think the select board is going to want the commission and the committee to review it before it goes to the select board.
Yeah.
Even the first time.
Even the first
They'd
time.
rather
Okay.
be the polish.
Yeah.
I think
It'll
it'll make it easier for everybody.
Right.
And invite keep the other committees apprised of what we're doing.
Yeah.
It's great. And show them the latest drafts.
Right, you feel like the select board doesn't necessarily need to, steer or tweak things. They're more just kind of like,
they're
great, or this needs more work.
right. I think my sense is they're appreciative of the collaboration and the continued collaboration.
And don't necessarily want to be a collaborator.
Well, they have roads to fix and all
Yeah, yeah.
sorts of stuff to do.
Mhm.
So,
Yep.
yeah, that's my sense.
Okay.
So that being the case, I believe that when we initially talked about extending our deadline for the management plan to the select board, we had talked about September, but then I believe in that meeting, we relayed it as end of August. And then if we want RCC and RTC to weigh in on it, especially if they need to weigh in on it during a public, if we need to one public meeting process, for them to look at it and for us to look at it, to look at their comments and make those changes before it goes to select board, we should probably be sending this out to them now, or after this meeting. So I don't disagree with the approach that maybe they should look at it before it goes to the select board, but based on the timing and the fact that we have 2 meetings after this one.
Right.
And at the end of that August meeting, we should be basically ready to push that out to the select board. Unless we've decided on some general things and Ian or somebody is going to individually clean up a couple things right before it gets sent out, I think that we should be thinking about getting that out to those other committees for comment as soon as possible.
Right.
So maybe that's what we do, you know, after this meeting, or you know, by the end of this meeting, we decide to send it out to them to review.
Right.
Does that, I mean, I'd hate to push out the deadline, you know, for the select board again. I don't think we can really do that. Because we already did it, and you know, they were nice about it, but if we keep doing that, I think they're gonna maybe lose their patience with us a
Could be
little bit.
detriment to sending it to them after this meeting. After all, we can continue to work on it pending their input.
Yeah.
The only detriment is, you know, there are unresolved edits, and so getting them involved in the process while there's still a lot of, like, you know, markups on the document might be a little bit confusing. But it also kind of reveals the process a bit, so, you know, it might give them more to think about. You know, it can see that there are certain things that we're not necessarily agreeing on, and maybe in some ways they could help resolve some of those comments that are, you know, in conflict. So I don't know. I mean,
And we need a deadline.
yeah.
We have a deadline.
Right.
I mean, I took the August date as we'd make the select board happy if we pushed it out, say to an editor, to go to them and basically give them a progress report, not even ask them to actually review it. They could.
Oh,
I
so
think
you,
if it went to an editor and we told them this thing is gonna, you know, it's now 70 pages, it's gonna come back. We told the editor we'd like 30.
Yep.
They won't even bother looking, you know, and then they'll see this nice succinct thing, and I think they can then ponder that. But yeah, the August deadline, I see more of a progress report than anything. I don't know.
So let's come back to this.
Okay, yeah, when we get there.
sorry.
If that's okay.
Yeah, for sure.
And give Dan a chance to share with us the opportunity we have to having you be on the committee. So we've seen and read Dan's application, and maybe a few words for us would be good if that's your pleasure.
Okay, yeah.
And
thank you.
welcome.
Thanks very much. Yeah, you saw my application. Basically, I've been following this committee closely for, I think, around 3 years. So I'm well tuned into all the various discussions that have been going on. And I like the outdoors. I do all the things, skiing, hiking, running, some biking on gravel roads. And I have some past experience with land management that I think would be helpful here. And I'd like to help out.
Great.
I'm happy to take questions, but I don't want to like go over my whole biography.
Where was that work? Yeah.
That was like my previous life.
What part of
It was-
that was Vermont, right?
Yeah,
Yeah.
it was near Plymouth and Mount Holly, Vermont,
Oh, yeah.
and it was for this landowner called the Wilderness Corporation. That basically they would buy land around this area around Lake Nineveh that they were trying to protect. And then all of that land was under use value program, forest management. So we had it all under doing timber sales and did a lot of wildlife habitat improvement. And then we protected it through forest legacy funds. And then we take that cash that we got and buy more property. And it was sort of an endless perpetuated circle, and they're still going on now.
Yes.
So I was lucky enough to work for them for about 10 years. Did timber sales and wildlife work and all sorts of fun. We even did some controlled burns. It was really fun stuff.
Then you decided to take it easy and go to med school?
Yeah, and I had a midlife crisis. Here I am.
Swinging back.
Yeah, it's kind of, for me, it'd be fun, kind of a return to my roots.
It's a 3-year commitment, and if we hold to our deadlines, then, you know, we'll have a couple of years in your 3 years. We hope to go to the next step to do something with the management plan. If you had thoughts about, you know, what comes next after the management plan goes through the approval process.
Yeah, then it's implementation. We're excited to help get things happening up there, get people using the forest wildlife and.
Other thoughts, comments?
Thanks for being a part of this.
Thank you for being welcoming.
So we, I think would look for a vote to recommend to the select board, probably at their first meeting in,
July
July.
7th, they told me.
oh, okay,
Let's hope, yeah, let's hope they can put that in.
right. Is
So I
the-
make a motion that we recommend Dan Wolfson to the select board.
I'll second.
ASAP.
I heard a second.
Yep.
From Sam. Discussion, further discussion? All those in favor, say aye. Any opposed, any abstentions? The ayes have all the votes. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Please stay if that's your pleasure.
Yeah, that'd be great. Thank you.
More important.
Well, most of us know that you've been here for most meetings anyway, so it's, you know, it's no big change. You just get a vote now. And you can talk more if you want to.
Ian put on the agenda for 6:30, which is we're on schedule. The thought to meet with Beth and Bruce Hennessy with Maplewind as an important abutter to see what they're up to and share with them what we're up to. And
Well, and as we put this on the agenda, right, I just had a quick discussion, you know, what we might want to speak with these adjacent landowners. You know, we've met with other adjacent landowners. It's good to have a good relationship with them. And I think, right, my understanding is right, it is probably the best person to make contact and do that.
happy to. I don't need to be, but I'm happy to. A few years back, we were negotiating with them to create a legal document so that they could pasture their young stock in the two meadows, the lower meadow and the upper meadow. And we got stuck on the legal document that was needed. The town attorney was requiring a license agreement, and the Hennessy's attorney was requiring a lease agreement. And we sort of stopped the conversation, I think in part because they weren't using it, and there wasn't a great need to put cattle there.
What's the difference between a licensing agreement and a lease agreement?
I'm not an attorney, but the rights to the tenant are less in a lease agreement than they are than a license agreement. A license agreement is more advantageous for the landowner.
Oh, for the landowner, for the
So,
town in that case.
Right. So my experience, I don't have direct experience on that. Cindy and I provided the town with a bus turnaround, and we wanted it perpetual versus, you know, we can boot you out. So we provided them at the town's attorney and our attorney a license agreement. They can turn the town around there, the buses around there for 40 years. And for some reason, it's more proper than a lease agreement.
Huh.
And the same is true with leasing land for crops and livestock. Does anybody have, I'd have to get some attorney to tell me that, so.
So that's a topic to
That's a
revisit, you
topic,
think?
right,
Yeah. Any other topics
Yeah.
that we
They-
want to raise?
The Maplewind has a right of way through your yard and then through Andrews Community Forest property on the east side of the Andrews Community Forest. It's the old farm road that ties into the Vast Trail. And when it hits the Vast Trail, the old farm road becomes owned by Maple Wind Farm, and we have a right of way across it to get to along the old Vast Trail. So
Andrews Forest does, or?
yes, no, Andrews Forest does. Yep.
So is that just to, like, if you're walking along that right of way, is that just to the left of the fence? Like there's like in the upper meadow? Are you saying the property boundary is actually,
It's right there, isn't it? On the-
okay.
Well,
I had always assumed
one
that,
side or
like,
the other.
It's
Okay.
one side or the other, and it's 20, I believe it's 25 feet. It's one side or the other of the 25 feet.
okay,
In the lower part, you mean?
in the upper. part, I think.
Above your property, it's 25 feet that the town owns. That the Maple Wind Farm has a perpetual right of way. And then above it, when it bumps into the Vast Trail, I think at that point it flips
Mhm.
where the town has a right of way across Maple Wind property.
So to answer your question, I think it's on the right of the property.
Yeah,
It
it's,
follows the creek.
Right.
yes. Yeah,
So if they were gonna push cattle up into those meadows, they would use the farm road that's past Sonia's house?
They typically to a little bit on the other side of the stream on Route 2, a little bit further east,
Which is past Sonia's.
which is past. That's typically where they've
There's a.
driven
Oh,
the cattle in.
yeah.
Gotcha.
And then up on top, that connects to there's a very large meadow up on top that they own.
Yep.
I guess one of the reasons to talk to them is, get an update. We'll give them an update, but also find out what their interest is in licensing the meadows. And I had suggested to Bruce a few years ago, what if we discontinued that farm right of way and had their vehicular access to get to their upper meadows, go up the utility road? And the utility company said, yeah, we'd need an agreement, but that was fine with the utility company. And it's an upgraded road that almost ties into the quote Vast Trail Road under the power line. There's a small section of a couple hundred feet where the road would need to be improved. But that would get future vehicles off the old farm road down low.
So this would just be for vehicle access? They would use the like the Velcro?
That was my idea.
Okay.
yes. Yep.
Vehicles and cows.
They could drive them up, like a herd, or they
Mhm.
could drive them up in trailers.
Oh, okay.
top. And then,
Oh, yep.
so that was,
So all the traffic from Maple Wind Farm would be routed to that main road at the gate from the parking lot rather than through Sonia's property and
Right.
up that way.
exact, that was a thought we on the committee had a few years ago, just to, seems like a good idea.
Seems.
Yeah, I would say any way we can help them
Right.
would be
And
worth.
this is an issue, I expect, because the Vast Trail, the farm road is severely eroded.
Right.
And farm traffic, it may be part of the reason, but I imagine that it seems to be just water damage, water
Right,
damage.
right. So,
Sounds like a win-win for
right.
everybody.
So that was what we've talked about previously.
So would they have a key then to that gate?
It's a combination.
It's a combination.
Yeah, there's a combination there on that gate, and there's a combination, there's 3 locks on the utility road gate. And they're all in sequence, so Green Mountain Power has their own lock. The other power company has their own lock, and we have a lock on this sequential chain, so we unlock our lock with
Oh,
a
I see.
combination.
You can,
And then lock it up, and then if the utility comes by, they can unlock their lock, and so
and so Bruce and Beth would have,
they have the combination, or they
They have
did,
the
yeah,
combination.
we shared it with them,
Yeah.
yep. Yep.
yeah, that
So
sounds,
They have the combination.
Nobody gave me the combination.
Oh, okay, all right. Happy to give it to you.
Thank you.
that all sounds great.
Yeah.
That's,
Yeah, and they're awesome.
worth- yeah, oh yeah.
They're wonderful people.
Yeah.
So we've been joined by Chelsea Brooks, who is responsible in some way for the town plan, rewriting the town plan, so we should certainly recognize Chelsea. Maybe have her introduce herself for the reason for joining.
Hi. Yeah, I just joined to listen into the meeting. I'm sort of here, not officially in the capacity of being a steering committee member, but just a general resident interest while I weed my garden out here today. Thanks.
Good for you. Wow.
Yeah.
Do we wanna, we're on schedule. Do we wanna visit about the RFP now for
And not forget Jake Robertson at some point,
right,
the trails maintenance.
right. Do you want to do Jack Robertson now, or do you want to do the RFP?
Let's do Jake. And he, I mean, he's not online or not present, but so we've seen the correspondence. And he's given a lot of detail, of course, in his emails about what he thinks should be done on the sort of in the lower part of the forest and on Urbanic Way, Meadow Meander, and maybe the farm road, some trees down. Yeah, most of what he's addressing is the idea of clearing through some undergrowth on Meadow Meander, which is quite overgrown and has a population of ticks, as I found out last week. And you brush against it. And there are trees down, and he believes that there's an issue of a wet area at the top of Urbanic Way, which he could do something with more substantially. So I mean, my sense is the question is, we have a choice. Do we thank him for his offer and say, go for it? Or do we form a work party, and so he's not taking on the whole job, whole amount of work? And his email suggests that I think he'd rather just sort of do things himself at his own pace and not be constrained by a time frame. When he feels like going up there, he would do that. And he notes that he has some kind of chainsaw certification. I think that's another issue of safety, is should we be authorizing someone to go on their own to do chainsaw work? So I think that's what I gleaned from the email thread. And I guess this, for us, the question is, do we give him the go ahead, or do we prefer to have some kind of work party if it's only one of us accompanying him, maybe?
Maybe just a walkthrough with him, see what he wants to do. Because I'll confess, I'm clueless about, the condition of those trails. I haven't been on them in a while, those particular ones.
So Brad said alternatively a walkthrough.
Yeah.
With one of us just to meet with him and see what is a little bit more detail, what he's proposing.
And this is
Good idea.
voluntary, right? No pay.
Correct, yeah. He did previously take a chainsaw to a down tree on Urbanic Way. I think we'd already made a start on it, but it was kind of beyond the tools that we had, but he took it upon himself to do that. And that kind of triggered a short discussion about should we let him go out there and do things on his own and according to his own judgment. But yeah, so someone to get together with him and walk would be a great idea, I think. Volunteers? Volunteer or volunteers?
I would meet with him. I think it would be helpful. I mean, I don't have any issues with him doing this work. It seems like a nice way to get somebody in the community involved who's offering to help. But yeah, it might be nice for someone from this committee to at least walk it with him and see whether or not it's, hey, let's walk it and then we can talk further, or I'd even be okay with just if he has a day that he's planning on going and doing the work, I could just meet with him and just make sure that I don't have a chainsaw certification. I have a chainsaw, or I could just go and watch him cut the tree. I can move logs while he cuts them or something. But it might be nice to have, I don't know, just a little bit of accountability just amongst, this committee there, just so we're at least somewhat aware of what's happening.
That's great, thanks.
I'll also point out, he mentions in the email for the water mitigation, I think that he mentions two options. He says this could likely be improved in about an hour with a rogue hoe to clear out existing drainage. But he also mentions potentially a more permanent fix. But I think that because of the discussions we've had with the zoning administrator, like I don't think we can really do any like improvements. We could potentially flag a spot, take some pictures and talk about it as a group or something. But I don't think we can really move forward with actual changes, especially for anything that's going to mitigate water. But if we're just cleaning out a drainage ditch or something,
Yeah,
it
we can
seems-
fix trails all day long.
okay.
Without, in my opinion, without zoning approval.
Yeah, did you guys talk to Virginia? About that letter that Tyler had written?
No.
Cause I talked with her about some of that and she said, and I talked to Keith as well.
Right.
And it sounds like that interpretation is moving along with, they're no longer gonna look at it that way.
Okay.
That trails are development. There's still, so basically, my understanding was they would like to address that in the ordinance. Once the town plan is written and voted on and approved, there will be ordinance work that will follow. Maybe Chelsea can speak to this. At that time, they would like to have more specific language about what constitutes a trail versus a recreational path, what can and can't be done. But basically that letter that Tyler wrote, we don't need to worry about that. That was
We don't have to worry about it long term
I mean,
or at all.
the new zoning administrator could interpret it the exact same way that Tyler did, but Keith as the current zoning administrator and Virginia as the chair of the planning commission, they said they felt like that was an overreach. So,
Statement, something from.
so
them?
I asked Virginia for that, and she said she was gonna talk to you directly.
Oh, okay.
That she was friends with you and that she could talk you through that.
Okay.
So that was, and so that's why I literally said, could we get something in writing
I
to?
saw her a week ago and
Okay.
that didn't come up.
Okay.
All right, so, all right. Yeah,
Anyway.
Okay,
And
good.
I don't know if that's like
well, then
kind of official and unofficial at the same time,
Right.
but
if I visit with her, I'll write it down so that we can.
okay, yeah.
So that we're not, so, yeah, okay.
But that's only about new construction, right? I mean.
Yeah, certainly
Maintenance.
maintenance on existing
Right.
trails, yeah, for sure. I
Right.
think we can clear the corridor and,
Right,
yeah.
okay, so,
Just a quick, not to be Debbie Downer. I hate to bring this up. Is a town liability, he's basically a contractor, right? Even though he's not being paid. I mean, we need to run it by Josh, that's all, to see if there's,
well,
any kind of liability waiver he's gotta do, I don't.
I don't think so, but I'll visit with Josh, it's, yeah,
Would be equal to the liability for any guest of the property.
Yeah.
Yeah.
We already have.
I wonder.
coverage.
But he's doing work in our direction, and that's.
I think
seems
that's where
stuff.
if he's self-directed, if it's his idea, he proposed it, he has this chainsaw certification, it,
Yeah. Okay.
a lot of that pushes back onto him. He's not really doing it at our direction, right? It's his own proposal.
So I was covering the email communication with Jake. Looks like I should report back to him from this meeting and include Sam so that we can coordinate. I mean,
Right.
you'll probably take over, but I'm the one who's been talking with him, so.
Yeah, that sounds good. Yeah, based on the number of things he mentioned, it sounds like it's probably going to be an ongoing,
right.
there's going to be a few trips. So maybe we take an initial trip and he just kind of walks me through all this stuff because it's quite lengthy talking about the overgrowth of the grass on like just the Meadow Meander and Urbanic, and also the like farm utility roads have a lot of grass on them, and there's the down tree, and then like the water mitigation. So to me, even with a group, that sounds like it's something that would take probably multiple sessions to resolve. So
a little bit later, I'm gonna volunteer to brush hog
oh, sweet.
the roads and the lower meadow.
Okay.
So,
Lower Meadow meaning the Meadow Meander Trail, or
yeah,
okay,
yeah.
cool.
be happy to. Well, and some of the lower meadow is your property. And so I'll visit with you, but that's,
Okay, great.
Is, what's the timing of that? Do you reckon?
well, I get approval tonight and then, I don't know, August?
Is there, cause I think, aren't there bird considerations? Nesting
Yeah.
birds?
So it's generally early in the season. So in August, are
you in the clear by then? I thought it was pretty late.
Okay,
that you're supposed to,
alright.
but I'm not an expert.
All right, well,
I just,
happy to do it whenever. If it's too late and all of the wild plants are seeding, it completely clogs up the grill of
oh, yeah,
the
radiator.
And probably already also spreads more seeds, so it
Right.
could
So
be worse in future seasons.
I'll take direction from the committee. Yeah.
I may not have heard mentioning of nesting birds as well.
That's what we're talking
Yeah,
about.
but you
Yeah.
raised that as
Yeah.
well as the
Yeah.
seeding of that plants, yeah.
Yeah.
We could ask the Conservation Commission. I don't know
Oh, yeah.
personally, but I do know that sometimes, folks on the Conservation Commission just know about these
Right.
things,
That'd be great.
like Jeanette had mentioned turtles, when we were
Right.
talking about the parking lot last meeting, and it's like, I had no clue that was a thing, but Jeanette was all over it. So,
Right.
that's a group of folks that are pretty
Sure.
clued into some of those things, so it
Yep.
wouldn't hurt to check before we do
Sure.
that, but that's great, because that saves a lot of man hours if you can
Right.
brush hog it versus
that'd
going
be-
through with a pair of loppers and a weed whacker.
Be amazing to,
Right.
that's,
So,
you've done that in the past, right?
yes.
How many years has it been?
It's probably been 3 or 4 where I brush hog the roads, the trails.
Yeah.
Basically the vast trail. And then probably 8 or 10 since I did the lower meadow.
Oh, wow, so it's due.
Yeah, it is due. There's pretty good sized trees that we gotta
White
catch them.
pine.
Yeah, white pine.
And your brush hog go right through those?
I'll bring a chainsaw, just
Just,
cut them down and chew them up.
Oh, Chelsea Brooks has a hand raised.
Hi. Sorry, I just wanted to mention, I thought it was easier than typing it all out in the chat. The discussion in regards to the memo from Tyler Mesha. And I would say that the information that you've received thus far from Keith in Virginia is, as you said, sort of unofficially official. The sort of town plan side of things is that your input for the rewrite, especially in regards to the Andrews Community Forest, will guide things that will then change zoning ordinance. So the town plan is what allows our town as a whole to even have zoning ordinance, and the zoning ordinance has to be in line with the town plan. And so that's sort of a little pitch for why it's important to have the town plan align, especially with like the goals and intents of this committee and the town as a whole's plan for the town forest. And then taking off that steering committee hat, resident hat, is that I have done some extensive research on the subject of development when it comes to trails and looking at what neighboring towns are doing. And for any of you interested in this subject or in pursuing the town plan side of things or the zoning ordinance changes, like Jericho, for example, has really great zoning when it comes to trails, and they talk about passive versus active recreation. So they even break it down to like trails being passive recreation versus something else. I can't think of examples, but anyhow, if you'd like to look at an example of some zoning for that, but yeah, I don't foresee the town being more restrictive in the future. If anything, they'll be less so.
Chelsea, I've got some stuff I could share with you too. I researched a whole bunch, like 20 towns around Vermont a few months ago, so I can send that to you.
Yeah,
It
yeah,
really, it's all over the map, is what I was seeing.
yeah, that would be
So-
great. I mean, I'm not surprised when you say it's all over the map. I think it really depends on the intent of the town and sort of like, right, like a town that has a community forest is probably going to have different zoning and different sort of intentions and goals than a town who doesn't have community land such as ours. And I went even deeper as far as like the state goes, because I asked like stormwater, for example, because our current town zoning is written in such a way that there'd have to be some very expensive engineering done just to do like a new trail. And I asked the state stormwater folks, like, how does the state handle that at like state parks, for example, right? Like, what do you do if you're putting in new trails in the state parks? And it's not even regulated at all. Like, they don't consider that to be a stormwater impact. And so the fact that our town currently is handling it in such a way that you'd have to come up with an erosion prevention and sediment control plan is a little over the top.
Even on slopes, Chelsea? I mean,
Yeah,
over 30
yep. They don't regulate it. So like those state parks are not required to submit, construction stormwater or operational discharge permits. They don't have to include their trails in those permits that they currently have in existence. Because most state parks do have stormwater permits in existence, because for example, all the paved roadways and things like that are under jurisdiction, but trails are not, unless they're paved.
Mhm.
Yeah.
Interesting. Yeah, thanks.
Thanks, Chelsea.
Excuse me.
Can we swing back to the RFP?
RFP.
Right.
Yeah, I'd like to say a few things about the history of where that came from, where the idea came from. It's probably 18 months ago that this committee was looking at the task of writing a management plan and saying, look, we need help here, and we should ask for funding to hire a consultant. What happened next was, if I'm remembering this correctly, Daniel Smith said, "Oh, no worries, I'll do it," and he made a start on it, but then resigned from the committee. And I foolishly picked it up from him, and I've put in a lot of hours into trying to coordinate everybody's efforts on the management plan. So now I'm getting to the point where I really would like to spend my time doing other things. So I really wanted to revisit this issue of the RFP. But if the question is, how much work have we done, and how much do we want to define as the charge for a consultant? And my understanding is that for a document like this, there are kind of three levels of assistance that you can get. One is an editor who really kind of takes on the project and does background research and has substantial input. That's one level. The next one would be copy editing. And a copy editor, if I'm correct on all of this, takes an existing document and cleans it up and does a certain amount of fact checking and sort of verifying references and perhaps some reorganization of text or headings. That would be a copy editor. And then beyond that is a proofreader. And proofreaders have a very limited set of responsibilities. They're sort of checking spelling and punctuation and things like that. And they are not really expected to change the content. So I believe that initially we were looking for an editor, and now I believe that we're looking for a copy editor. So what we have in the packet now is intended to be written along those lines of identifying tasks that a copy editor would do, And so would take the draft maybe after September, when we believe it's in pretty good shape, and we would hand it over to this person who would be doing a bit more than cleaning it up, providing input so that the qualifications that are identified in this RFP include ideally somebody who has experience with management plans for publicly owned lands, and can provide that expertise as well as just the working with the text that we provide. But I find it difficult to know exactly how it would be written, and I think I've done my best in working on it over a period of time with input to get an RFP. The next steps, if we like it, or after modifying it or approving it, would be, well, to run it by Josh at an early stage, because he would be responsible for the towns putting out a bidding process. And he obviously has all of that experience. So we would need Josh to go through it and comment on it, make recommendations. The other thing that I think we need to resolve is how would we pay this person? Where would the funds come from? And of course, the town conservation fund would be an obvious choice again. And we would have to comply with their process, the process that the RCC uses to handle those requests. So there would be some work to do there. And I think if we're going to that fund, then we would have to identify an upper limit of a budget, which Josh actually told me it's not a good idea to write a upper limit budget into an RFP. It would sort of become public information if we had that funding approved, but we would need to consider it. And my sense, when just kind of off the top of my head, is what are we talking about in terms of money? I'm thinking 100 hours at $100 is 10 grand. So that's sort of really a ballpark sense of the magnitude. So that's the background, and it's in the packet. And so I guess open for discussion.
One thing that I learned from Virginia in that meeting is that they, are very good at creating a town plan. I think they're efficient, and they seems like avoid a lot of the pitfalls that we've been falling into. One of the things they do is they focus on one section at a time, and that's it. And they go through and they finish it and they move on to the next section. I do wonder if we really discipline ourselves, and maybe we could lean on that group a little bit, given their skill set. If we could avoid spending 10 grand on a person to just edit this thing, I feel like we should at least consider that.
I did sometime, probably a year ago, I talked with Josh just to sort of get the sense of how we would handle an RFP. And and one of my questions was, well, does the town have these resources available so that we wouldn't, certainly not in its entirety, be putting this out to contract? And at that time he was saying, we're too busy on things like the town plan, so we don't have the resources available within the town administration staff. If that helps.
We also have our own funds. So there's the Conservation Reserve Fund, but there is, I don't remember, we got 12,000 from the power company a couple months ago for the easement. And we did logging a few years back, and there's, I don't know, 4 grand.
And there's like a separate account or something for?
There's a
ACF?
separate accounting. It all,
Okay,
the Conservation Reserve Fund and the little bit that we can oversee goes into the general fund. But
gotcha.
there's a spreadsheet that accounts for
Yeah,
the growth,
That's
who's got what and the growth of it. And
okay.
So, there's a question in my mind actually, which I forgot to ask. So potentially the funds available for the ballpark figure that I threw out,
Yes.
we could actually
Yeah.
do that.
we may not want to, but we could, or we
Yeah.
could match it, or we could do, yeah.
So I have a few thoughts. I think one, your sort of breakdown of the types of editors was good. I think we would be looking for a copy editor. I don't think we need somebody to do the research necessarily, but some of a little bit more than just editing for punctuation, and like verifying, things if they do have experience writing or editing management plans. I have no idea if the $10,000 figure is accurate or not. I mean, I have pretty much no experience with RFPs or this type of work, so I don't really know, but nothing's stopping us from putting out an RFP, we get bids, and if they're all wildly expensive, we could just say we can't afford this and not go with any of them, right? I mean, the expectation is you put out RFPs and not all the bids are going to get the job, right? So people are used to getting rejected anyway, if we're putting out bids for something. So yeah, I'm not against considering the conservation reserve fund method, because there is a decent amount of money in that fund, but we would definitely need to take a look at the criteria and see like what criteria it meets, just because there is strict criteria that this is certainly conservation adjacent, but I don't know if it like fits nicely under the exact criteria in the conservation reserve fund. So it might be a stretch to say like, well, we want to hire an editor for the management plan. But the conservation reserve fund did pay in part for the land, like the ACF land. So it doesn't seem out of the question. And that would be a good way to utilize some of those funds. So yeah, I think I like the idea of leaning on the expertise of other people in town, but I have a few concerns about it. One being, I think the planning commission is pretty busy right now, considering the fact that the town plan is, being revised, and asking them to help us with this while they're in the middle of trying to get all those things done, I think is a pretty big ask. And like, I just don't know if that's something, I don't know if Chelsea can speak to that, but it just seems like getting them involved when they have got a lot of other responsibilities might not be what they're looking
Time
for.
for. time for
Oh, hi,
lemonade.
sorry. I think I have dirt on my forehead. Hold on, buddy. So I'm not saying that they're not busy or that it wouldn't be a big ask, but just to be clarify, the planning commission has three. Just a minute. The planning commission has 3 members who are part of the town plan like steering committee. Virginia, Ian, and Brighton. So I would say it's not necessarily a bad idea to reach out and just inquire about it, because perhaps the other members, Mark Fausel or Chris Granda, would have some interest or time that they could commit to you guys. But yeah, the steering committee is presently doing the sort of big lift. And there's a couple of free commissioners, I guess. And free is, I'm like generous with that term. Like I said, I don't know their personal interests or their willingness to assist, but do with the information you will.
Okay. Thank you.
Chelsea, while you're there, the last time, the current town plan though is done with consultants, wasn't it? As I recall, I can't remember the name of the outfit.
Yes. So I was not a part of the previous town plan rewrite, but it was like, I guess, a pretty huge undertaking, because before that, our town plan was super outdated and antiquated. So they hired in a company like consultants to rewrite it. But my understanding is that they didn't like it. like they hired in a consulting company to do the rewrite and they weren't happy with it. And so then the planning commission ended up like redoing it and redoing their rewrite. And so again, I guess also take that with what you will as you're considering hiring consultants to write the community forest forest management plan, because I think that perhaps some of the struggles that are present aren't necessarily going to go away with the hiring of a consultant. Things that people are already super divided on might carry through to the, like, once you're reviewing what your consultant presents to you and you're all like, well, I don't know, we still don't like this. The story as told by Virginia sounds like it was a bit of wasted money, unfortunately. So I don't know.
And that was a total rewrite, of course, we're talking.
Yes, that was from scratch.
Right.
Yeah, hopefully those, oh,
Sure.
sorry, go ahead.
Well, we deferred the question of comments, input from the commission and the committee and the public and potentially the select board. So that reminds me that what's written into this RFP at present includes 2 cycles of input and comment. And so the consultant, it's written into this that the consultant would be in part responsible for managing that input. So that does add to the magnitude of the task, because, and it's sort of an unknown because one doesn't really know the amount of comment and helpful suggestions that would be coming in during those 2 cycles. But potentially it's a lot of work, and potentially it's something that I believe the committee should get professional help with, or get a consultant to help with that process, because it could
But we would be
potentially be a lot.
Do you see us as being the filter though between, say, the commenters and the editor?
Yeah,
So they don't have to sit there and listen and then go home and.
yeah.
I think the
That's-
commenters are us. I think we
Well, I'm
are
thinking
the
of
potential problem.
Committees, the public, we don't have to ask the editor to resolve any issues on their own. We would give them direction.
Yeah, so it's a question of division of labor really between the consultant and this committee.
Yeah.
How capable will a consultant be to do that filtering and evaluation, and how much time and money would we want to allocate to that rather than trying to do it ourselves?
I wouldn't lay that on us. I mean, I was a hired gun writer for 40 years or more, maybe. That's a responsibility I wouldn't want to take, it's whatever the client, the board of directors. Some people saying this, some saying that, there could be, stockholders saying something, but somebody ultimately has to tell me what to write. I mean, you could help them walk through the issues, but don't put me in
I
the
see.
role to.
So you feel like the sort of issues are decided, the compromises are struck, and then it's just make music with
That's what.
these ideas. Yeah,
That's what
I got you.
copy it, because then
Right.
otherwise you're getting.
Yeah.
Weeds.
Yes.
Yeah, I don't see this consultant resolving issues.
Agreed.
Like, this group needs to make those decisions. They're just cleaning it up.
Yeah.
Make it look good.
Yeah, really.
Maybe it'll be a lot less hours.
Yeah.
That would be my hope. I mean, I feel like taking a pass to polish it would hopefully take less than 100 hours, or, but I don't know. I mean, it is a hefty document, and I don't really know much about that space.
I recently, with my Richmond Land Trust hat on, we went to the Conservation Reserve Fund, but for a parking lot, we didn't go to the Conservation Commission until we did the RFP, got the bids, selected the lowest bidder. And then we knew what to ask the
Oh, yep.
Conservation Reserve, the Conservation Commission for funds and select board. So
Yep.
And folks looking to do that work would understand the modest delay in time.
Yep. I think it's also worth considering that what we're talking about here is kind of like, on one side, you have pay a lot of money to get somebody else to do it potentially faster. And on the other hand, you have more volunteer hours, like for us. But also the select board is well aware of how long this process is taking, and ultimately they're the ones that are going to approve or deny the application for conservation reserve funds. So they might say like, well, we really want to see this done, and like this is close enough to the criteria that we're okay with, you know, spending $10,000 to just get this, you know, out the door because it's been so long.
Yep.
So I think part of it is like, it's ultimately really going to be on them. But I think that moving forward with the RFP process for like the sort of copy editor like role seems like something that's worth pursuing now, because it's going to take some time to
Exactly,
firm it
yeah.
up.
That's what I wanted to raise, was sort of the time scheduling for this. Because if we start today, we probably wouldn't have a contract for a matter of months with all the things we'd have to go through. So if we're ready to start, what's the plan? I think that this draft that's in the packet needs some input, you know, needs committee members to submit comments, you know, much as we're doing with the management plan.
But
And
I
work
think-
with Jock.
I think we need to not submit comments, right? We need to have these issues resolved. So commenting is not going to give a copy editor.
We're talking about
Oh, I mean-
comments on the RFP.
Just the RFP, yeah,
sorry.
yeah, sorry. Yeah,
Well,
because
I kind of agree with you on the RFP. You know, we've got a draft.
Yeah.
It's longer than it might need to be, but someone's gonna figure it out.
And one thing might add to the draft somewhere there, Ian, maybe it's in there and I missed it, it's something that said, right now, the draft we've got for you is X number of pages, you know. We feel that we would love to see that boiled down by X%. And then just leave it blank for now, and then when this thing actually goes out, maybe we drop another one, I don't know. That's all, just a couple specific, just to give them a sense. You know, I wonder though, Jim, on your comment though about they shouldn't see the comments, I wonder, what if we did send it out, not right now, but it still had a couple marginal notes, you know, do we really want to do this, or how about that? And we told them, right now, as we're looking for somebody, we haven't resolved these, but by the thing we give you, won't have any of those.
Yeah,
We'll set it-
yeah.
And that'll give them a feel for what.
Totally, yeah.
they're looking at.
Oh, that's a great idea. Yeah.
Is it expected we would send them the current draft of the management plan with the RFP, or would they just be looking at the RFP?
So you would help.
Soon they'd have to see the.
Would give
actual
me a
benefit
feel for
plan,
it.
Yeah.
Okay, well, yeah, that we could.
You know what they're talking about.
Right.
So Ian, are you hoping to get approval to push this out, and is that what you're proposing?
And the first step is for members of the committee to comment on the text that's in the packet. And then fairly shortly, or maybe simultaneously, talk with Josh about the process, you know, to make sure we know how to handle this correctly, and he knows about our plan. Yeah, there was something else on my mind. It'll come back.
Is my faith misplaced that this committee actually could produce a very readable document that requires only some spot proofreading? It seems to me that we might be capable of producing a document that doesn't require massive overhauls or spot reading. That we can express ourselves pretty eloquently and with organized prose, so that we can avoid a large expenditure or even a small expenditure of someone to review it so meticulously.
My experience is writing by committee is really slow. And it's been years.
We're a case in point.
Well, I can only pick on me. Yeah, it's been years. So I thoughtfully challenge you that I think we need to encourage someone to look at it and take on that responsibility because it's,
So, but yet here we are just commenting on an RFP. I think we ought to be able to push this out, right?
yeah,
Yeah.
right.
You think we ought to be able to do it?
Push it out.
Push it out. I mean, if an RFP is, we're not hiring somebody, we're just, right? We're just getting quotes.
Yep,
So, yeah, let's get 3 quotes.
right.
And,
Is that a
but
motion?
Ian, you feel like you need more comments before we can approve this RFP proposal? Or,
I would like to see comments on what's been circulated, what's in the packet. I mean, I think that it raises a few questions. I think maybe even I could identify questions. I think the major one is the scope of work. You know, how much is the consultant going to be having their own using their own judgment? To what extent are they going to be working with this committee or some members of this committee to go through it?
We had great success in a subcommittee. Could we empower a subcommittee
Yeah.
to work with you, 2 people to work with you so that we can get the RFP moved on?
In an editing sense, in a
Yeah,
polishing sense?
polishing the RFP.
Of the RFP.
All right, so we have 1 volunteer.
Maybe we could get a copy of her.
Were you volunteering, Brad?
Shouldn't have opened your mouth.
Yeah, I'd try to help, yeah.
Are we okay with that? Do we want a motion to form a subcommittee? And we're not gonna see that again, correct? If we form a subcommittee, they are empowered to get the RFP to Josh.
Okay, and the subcommittee is Brad and myself and
Sonia.
and Sonia. So
Right.
the 3 of, yeah, great.
I think we just need to agree that the RFP is not giving this consultant decision-making power. We have to resolve those sticky issues and give them the guidance.
Yep.
Yeah.
Because
Yeah,
otherwise
this is
that's
the
a whole
dilemma
different
that
task.
Yeah.
We would just have to rewrite it,
Right,
and they were done.
yeah, we just won't be happy, like, we have to decide what we want, give it to them. If we just turn it over to them, we don't know what we're gonna get back, and we may be unhappy with it.
But at the same time, if it's someone with expertise, we would, welcome their critical input.
Mhm.
I mean, I think that's potentially the dilemma until we want to define the scope of work as much as possible, but at the same time, it would be nice to have some flexibility depending on who actually shows up and we contract with.
I think the hope is also that when we're gonna have the subcommittee work on the RFP, we're gonna put out the RFP, we're gonna get our bids, we're gonna pick somebody, we're gonna have to, go to the Conservation Commission, to get the funds approved or, figure out how we're gonna fund it. And then, it'll get shipped to them and then they're gonna work on it. By then, we'll have had, weeks or months to work on this further. Hopefully what we are delivering to them by then doesn't have the conflicts that they're gonna be expected to work out. Like they're gonna look at the document we send them, even if they get a current version along with the RFP, when they start their work, we're going to say, okay, here's the document we want you to look at. And so if we've removed those conflicts by then hopefully they're not going to do any like editorializing and they're just going to go through and do the proofreading. And if they see something that's, patently false in the management plan, I would hope they would call it out and say like, hey, this doesn't seem right to me. But hopefully that, they wouldn't be doing any more than that. They would basically just be doing the polish.
And the time frame for the subcommittee is bring a polished RFP to our next meeting a month from now.
No, I think it would be
We have the authority.
You have the authority to complete it and get it to Josh within a couple of weeks.
2 weeks.
Is there a motion for that?
Yeah, as long as we think that's within the limits of what we're allowed to do. I'm okay with that. I think it's great if we could get it edited and shipped off to Josh within a few weeks versus waiting until next meeting.
Technically, it's gonna come from the select board, right?
Yes,
That will have the town's input on it.
right.
You know, they have to approve.
Yep.
Yeah, I guess, I have a couple very general thoughts that I could send to you, Ian. And then you could take that to your meeting if I get them to you in the next day or two. But I know nothing about writing RFPs, so I don't know if this is a good one. You know, it's like, it looks good to me, but I think it looks very official and technical. So for the most part, you know, I'd be kind of fine with sending it out as is, but I know that other people might have other opinions about whether or not this is, you know, a good looking RFP. So I got a couple of very general comments I can send your way, but I'd say I would make a motion to have a subcommittee look at the RFP, make some edits, and then send it along to Josh as soon as you're comfortable with how it's looking.
Is there a second?
I'll second that.
Right. Discussion? Thoughts? All those in favor of the
Aye.
motion? Any abstentions or denials? The ayes have it. I'm willing to draft the Conservation Reserve Fund application,
Oh, excellent.
and it'll probably be 3 pages or 2 pages.
Well, you did a great job with the last one we got, so.
Okay, yeah, so I'll do that and I'll share it with Ian.
Cool.
Yep.
Great.
We've really eroded away your time for dealing with the management. Now we're down to 50 minutes, maybe for that.
Well, to help us with that, are we tired of a mid-month meeting?
Yeah,
Weeks from now?
I'm not. I feel like I do better, and I've noticed this on the subcommittee, you know, that Brad, Jim and I have been working on. It's like, for me, I feel like I do more and better work when there are like in-person meetings on the books. I feel like
Right.
it kind of like keeps things moving and keeps things, I don't know, keeps everybody accountable.
Right.
Whereas like we had decided, oh, well, we're gonna kind of just remotely coordinate on this document. And then it didn't really, I feel like I'm very much guilty for that. For, you know, I had a big push right after our meeting where I did a bunch of work on it and then kind of like didn't get a chance to work on it after that. But when we had been meeting in person, I feel like the things were happening more rapidly. So I'm all for extra meetings if that's not too burdensome to other people on this committee. I think it's been helpful.
So,
Well, related and relating to our agenda and the time frame, I think that, you know, with the sections of the management plan that are identified in the agenda are the two, the ecology section, wildlife management, so on, and the recreation section. And my sense is that the recreation section needs more work by the work group, and so we should send this back to the work group and really minimize discussion right now, because my sense is that with the appendix, with the 2 main sections, there's an awful lot of text that actually needs refining and combining and identifying consistency with the ecological sections of the management plan. So I don't know if we want to limit discussion on recreation at this point, or even just defer it until the subcommittee comes back
That makes sense to me.
next time.
I agree with you. I think that makes the most sense. I think it's the best use of our time to have the 3 of us make sure we get together and work through some of that stuff before we try to.
so,
I mean, there's a lot of comments, but they're little, most of them, and a couple things we can discuss.
You feel good about that?
Oh, yeah.
Okay.
Comments, and then also, as Ian said, I mean, there needs to be some cross-referencing of other sections, like both the appendices and the rest of the document for consistency. That's the bigger task, I think, because I think we did do a lot of iterating on the recreation section, and I'm pretty happy with like how much progress we made, but it's a much bigger task to be like, okay, well, here's our recreation section. Now I have to compare that to all the other sections in the management plan and make sure that it's not in conflict.
Yeah.
And that's a little bit harder to do. And something that,
Just go.
yeah, and that's also going to help save us money when we get to the, potentially when we get to the, the editor, because we don't want there to be those types of conflicts. Hopefully we've resolved all the conflicts, and that's a conflict of a type, if there's just inconsistency in the management
Just
plan.
a matter of terminology. We have a work group of 3 who are collaborating on the recreation.
Mhm.
It's not a subcommittee.
Okay, yes, working group, my bad.
So do we want to,
I've been making that mistake.
while we're still on this, do we want to have a special meeting of the whole committee on Monday, July 14th, 6 to 8? It's halfway between now and the next meeting.
That seems smart.
Okay.
I'll be able to attend, but I'll be here in spirit. Okay.
I mean, is that up to the work group? Because I would argue for our next meeting should have a revision from the work group on recreation in not a semi-final form.
Yeah, that I was also wondering if we had, like, what else are we focused on right now? And is there, if it's going to take more than, because of just like the process of iterating on this, if, unless we meet this week, which we might be able to, it might be hard for us to clean that up and get a version out for people to look at for a meeting in 2 weeks from now.
It's 3 weeks.
Oh, it's 3 weeks.
Yeah,
Okay, then,
Because next Monday's the 30th.
Yep.
And then 2 weeks from then is the 14th. So you have 3 weeks
Oh,
before we
okay.
would meet.
I think that's doable then. Yeah, the other option was like, if a subcommittee is still hashing something out, then it's possible that we could, work group is hashing something out that, there are still other sections that we're still polishing up. So it could be, we use that extra meeting to not work on recreation, but to do all the other things, and then that way, I don't know if it's necessary since we have 3 weeks, but just something worth throwing out there, that
Yeah.
if we have working groups polishing up stuff, then we can kind of do almost like in every other meeting where it's like we bounce back and forth based on the progress that the working groups has made.
Right. Do we need a vote to have a special meeting?
No harm.
What?
No harm in that.
Okay. Is there a motion
Um,
to,
I move that we have a meeting on July 14th,
yep,
Mhm.
6 to 8, I think.
yeah,
Yeah.
Seconded.
discussion, thoughts? All those in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed, any abstentions? Great. Okay, now that we've pushed letter E into a working group, do we want to work on for the next 15 minutes, anything within E?
Within the ecology section, you mean, or?
Oh, that's right. I'm sorry. Yes, let's work on ecology. I combine them. I'm sorry. Yep. Yep. Yeah, sorry, my mistake.
Yeah, so, I mean, specifically the sections would be B5, wildlife and natural resources stewardship. So, is that right? And there is an appendix C that's associated with that, which has really sort of replaced the material in the A section, and that is identified as having been approved already. So appendix C is a done deal, and section B5, which is 7 pages long, has some comments inserted in the version that's in the packet.
Some new ones too, though, right? Are those, they're all in red news stuff, right?
The color scheme is, it's got a little bit out of control. I mean, I think the most, I was trying to use blue text in the recreation section, but we seem to have green and red, and frankly, I can't tell you what the distinction is
Your
between them.
initials.
Sorry.
You put your initials at the beginning.
Yeah, so, and I mean, there are comments in B5 that have my initials and your initials, Brad.
Yeah.
I don't know if there's anybody else has weighed in here, but I'm not aware of any hierarchy in terms of whether we look at green or red or you or me or anybody else. So, I mean, is that good, right? That we sort of start at the beginning and keep going until we get to the end, but focusing on comments rather than the text.
Right.
You would.
I can.
Well, you had one question I can speak to, I think, on page 25. Which is B5.2.1. Line 47. There's a bullet of protect neighboring properties, landscape, scale, ecological integrity, pursue opportunities to conserve.
Do we need to jump to that, or should we start at the beginning,
just
at page 24?
Plow through.
Sure.
Should I bring this up on see if I can find it, bring it up?
So, okay.
Yeah, I think it makes sense to start on page 24.
Okay.
Just so we're doing it in order.
So starting at page 24 of the draft management plan. So it's good, Brad, what I've put up.
I think that's good. So I would acknowledge both the green and the red text at the top there, and then say we could remove it, right? I mean, that's just sort of like narrative on what's going on in this, in the plan. But I think we've seen a few iterations of this at this point. So is there anything in there that we feel like needs to be in the management plan itself? Because I think that we can just remove those lines now.
Yeah, agreed.
Does that make sense? Do people?
Jim, I printed an extra copy if you want.
No, I've got it.
Oh, you've got it, okay.
Yeah.
So, Ian, you're saying in the red though, you're saying you think should there be something there that that you can say, note that this section, is that addressed to the reader or to us? That's all.
Oh, I saw them as two separate comments. The green inserted by Brad would be just an explanation of the whole thing, and my comment was just as an introductory thing to add some strength to the and credibility to what's there. We should identify that it's includes some new material, and specifically those two things I'm citing.
Well, is that, all right, well, the green is a comment to the group. That wasn't meant to be, right? That was just to set people up for. The idea of the consolidation of what had been 3 chapters in the earlier one, in the first thing. The red though, I think, and we should check, but I think we talk about the fact that this is structured to reflect the conservation design.
That's on line 13.
And when you say structured, you mean just the format of the?
Yeah, that's with a landscape community
Right.
species thing. Yeah. That's all.
Yeah, as Dan pointed out, it's on line 13, so I don't think we need to mention it twice. Like we're talking about in the next paragraph that it uses VCDs.
Yeah.
So yeah, I think we just want to get all what we definitely don't want, and what we see in a few locations in the management plan, is we're talking about how we iterated on the last version of the management plan. But that's not helpful to anyone except for us, right? It's like, so I think anytime we find something like that, we should acknowledge it and then remove it, assuming that we agree with the comment and it's somewhere in the body, we don't need to say like, this version improves on the last version by XYZ. It says in a few lines from here that we're using VCD's framework, and I think that's good enough for any reader who's looking.
Page is already set,
Yeah.
so we don't need that green
Green or red.
or the red.
That's
So are we,
Both.
are we using the VCD framework for the ecology section only or the every section? What's the vision there?
I think it's, I mean, it does inform the recreation section as well. It's mentioned and it's mentioned in the recreation section. So it's not.
But it's not, currently it's not formatted the way Brad's done it here, right?
How how appropriate that would be.
Would it be okay to have a completely different format for the ecology section from, say, the recreational section? I think we touched on this in our work group, but what is our, like, maybe we should use the town plan format where they have this pretty long preamble where a lot of that type of content could live, and then it's goals and actions. Boom, 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 boom.
Right.
I wonder if that would be easy to replicate. We could just have a standard format. Because right now we're going in two different directions.
Yes and no. You could, you could argue that this is all the upfront stuff, the introduction. It's just broken into pieces. So instead of someone seeing the mass.
I'm talking formatting, so I'm talking formatting.
Oh,
So this is, we can be quite specific.
What
right.
do they call the opening? Just, do they have a title, a general title for their openings under overview or something?
Oh, like in the, let me check.
Like in the
Let me
town
check for it. Yeah, in the town plan, how they do not, they don't break it down in the way that we do.
So it's more of an editorial. Fine, we could take the section headings out. I would argue for keeping, boldface subheads just to break it up. It helps readability. Otherwise it looks really imposing.
Yeah, I think that this is, I mean, maybe we'll resolve it, maybe we won't, but
Then go to objectives and action.
yeah, I mean,
I mean, in the recreation section, you did objectives, what you're trying to achieve. And you did guidelines, how you'll make decisions, and then you did actions, what you're actually going to do. And that's a nice format.
It sounds like
What Jimmy's saying is put a preamble, where you describe your rationale.
but didn't we decide we were gonna get rid of the management guidelines and just make objectives and actions?
Gonna try.
Did we?
Right. Certain management guidelines were more like objectives and certain management guidelines were more like actions, and we thought we could move it towards this format.
Which is pretty much what was in the old one too, I think.
Was it?
I think.
It
was kind of like the town plan objective.
so
But the introductory stuff,
if we're going to potentially adopt for the formatting from the recreation section, which is pending like working group review, would it not make sense to just go through the content rather than the formatting in here right now, and to like make sure we agree with the content, and then we can reformat it later once we've agreed on what we want our format to be? Like, this is a different format than the recreation section, but because that's pending, it's, I don't know, I feel like we're kind of spinning our wheels on formatting when I feel like we could be just getting through the actual content stuff here. And ultimately, the final like polish, I feel like that's part of what the editor is going to do anyway, is like look section to section and say like, hey, your recreation section looks very different format wise than your ecology section.
Yeah.
I just reorganized it. It has all the same content, but now it's organized in a consistent fashion that every section you go to, it's got the same flow.
I think having those two sections have the same, not requiring an editor to choose between two formatting options would
Yeah.
be really smart. And writing the recreation section with bullet points
Mhm.
is way different than writing with, multi-page preamble.
Yep.
So, and I think if we could have a really strict format, I think some of these comments would kind of just go away.
it's not.
Pointing out that we're following Vermont Conservation Design formatting is superfluous at that point. right?
It's not a multi-page preamble, it's.
Yeah, I'm not saying that's good or bad, Brad, not, or that it is or it isn't, I'm just saying it can be a very long preamble. Which just reads a lot differently and is utilized a lot differently than if you just go straight to bullets. I'm not advocating for eliminating the preamble, I think it's great, I think that's how our town plan is done, and I think it's really nice.
Well, what we could, another way to do it, maybe to keep with that format. So we've got, compared to the town plan, a really short preamble, because that. Let me back up. Oh, I wasn't. Okay, and it's still pretty short, that's it. Then, what we could do is. We could have, let's see. I mean, somewhere I think we have to, what I was gonna say. Just have one section that says objectives, right? And then divide that into landscape, community, species, then do action, landscape. So instead of doing landscape, objectives, actions, and then community, landscape, actions, just do objectives and just put a little, and it may not even need to be numbered, just bold type landscape level. But somewhere, I think we ought, if we're gonna do that, seeing that's a new concept, we ought to say a few words about what that scheme is, where that
Yeah.
derives.
What if it was, here's a crazy idea. What if it was color coded? What if you, in your first paragraph or in the preamble somewhere, you said landscape level is green. Community level is this, species level is this color. And the headings call that out, and then really intuitive, it would make a lot of sense. But however, if we do that.
We
if
got people reading off of black and white copies of the management plan right now. I don't think the
Right.
color is the best idea for that.
Well, my point remains, somehow this formatting is gonna have to be rectified with the other sections. And as great as the landscape community species concept is, I do wonder if it's an extra layer of organization that doesn't really need to be there. Right?
I mean-
We highlight that in the RFP saying.
Because potentially,
It just,
or it could be that the working group finishes the recreation stuff and then moves on to ecology to kind of push it through the same framework. I mean, this type of complete organizational change of a section does not seem like the type of thing we can reasonably do right now. Like, it just seems like, I do agree that I think we need some level of consistency, but trying to like reorganize all that format in this group setting.
I don't feel like I can read these comments without understanding how this content is gonna fit in the framework of the actual section. Is something like ZOIs can extend beyond 1,000 feet as a general recommendation for New England forests, et cetera. Is that really pertinent to the ecology section of the management plan? If we were just doing bullets, I would say no. But if there is a long preamble, I would say yes, that is good information,
Mhm.
you know? But if it's just bullets, I would say that should be in the appendix. So no, it's hard for me to read this and know where to draw those lines without really understanding what this format is gonna be section by section and how it needs to match or not match
Yeah.
between something like recreation and ecology.
I guess my point is we can still go through the document as it is right now with the comments and agree on those comments and integrate them. And then a working group could take a pass at things like the organization and like moving stuff around. Like the 1,000 feet, like if it's deemed that's going to be reorganized so that some of this goes into the appendix, then that would happen in the working group versus, you know.
Do you think that,
And the appendix C kind of is supposed to set the scene for this and to identify the sections and subheadings. Actually, I would like to intervene here because Brad raised something on the next page, and I wouldn't like to leave that floating. Is that something we could address, Brad? Is that something, you wanted to jump forward to us.
This is fine
thing
to
on
plow
that.
through. at the beginning.
Okay,
That was a real minor. This is, more,
okay.
so you'd be happy, Jim, basically going in bullets right away.
No,
Maybe.
I
No.
think that ideally the two sections would match. And it seems like most of the committee prefers this longer preamble. Goals and actions, and you have this extra layer of, broad to specific.
It's worth a try.
Maybe, how about if, maybe I should just stop talking because we're gonna have to answer this in our subgroup, right? We're gonna look at the rec section and change the format, be less bullety. Right? I think that's where we were headed.
So one or the other, either the rec section gets less bullety, so it looks like the rest of the management plan, or we decide that we like that for that format better, and then we have to change other sections to make it more similar. Which is why I think that, the formatting discussion right now doesn't make a whole lot of sense, because we're just trying to resolve, I would love to resolve some of these comments and get this color coded
Okay.
comments off of this document. Because then
Stop.
because then we
Yeah.
can move forward at like a cleaner copy where we've
Yeah.
gone through the comments and then we've approved them or denied them and we've moved on. And then it makes it easier to read as we move forward.
So
Good.
on line 21, it's just, we're using meters and we should shift over to,
The editor can grab that.
okay, fine.
That's where we're paying.
Yeah, that was something I
There's
shouldn't
lots
get
of-
lost.
I mean, if you lines below it, switch back to feet, so.
Right.
On line 13, if you're gonna take out Ian's comment from line 7, do you wanna just say Vermont Fish and Wildlife Department's Vermont Conservation Design?
No, just attribute it.
Yeah, I think
People
that,
know where it's coming from.
Yeah.
I think that's helpful.
Yeah, so.
And who's gonna take these edits that were suggested?
Yeah, are you writing them down or, yeah,
Are you putting them right in the document?
I'm looking at a PDF version, so I'm not editing anything, but I could,
I could do a comment. That's what I should do. It's a comment on PDF, okay. Yeah, I'll do it. Uses the, I think I can do it.
So on line 19, is that our next? Or are we past that?
Well, I think we agreed, well, I guess. As we go through, if we notice, I think we decide, feet makes more sense, probably, right?
Yes.
I mean,
It was a footnote, but the
Yeah.
footnote got lost, so I just wanted to make sure it
Yeah.
didn't get lost and inserted it then.
cool.
But in terms of the content, how, Ian, what do you would prefer that next, like 26 and down to be phrased differently? What do you comment? Because it
He's
looks
just
like,
commenting that here we talk about feet and in other places in the management plan, meters comes up. And so we need to be consistent about how we're talking about these distances, whether either it's metric or it's imperial. So
That was-
basically,
your comment in here is just that it's.
No, that was my.
That was-
oh, sorry, my bad.
What are you saying here, Ian? It
What are you
feels like it's the
saying?
same thing.
Right here.
Oh, I'm saying that we used to have a footnote that explained what a ZOI is, and I didn't want to see that lost, so I just put it after the first mention of zone of influence. I put that sort of definition of what that means.
So just ZOI needs to be written out
No,
somewhere?
I think what he's saying is, and it's written out on line 18. Ian is suggesting
Oh,
a
right.
definition for zones of influence for the reader.
That's right, yeah.
Right.
So do we just want to reword that from areas around trails where traffic can affect wildlife often adversely to areas within, or areas around trails within which wildlife can detect and flee or otherwise respond to human activity?
Yeah. It's shorter in the original.
Yeah, it seems pretty
In the illustration, it
succinct.
gets to the second point.
Mm-hmm.
I don't know if we need that.
I mean, is it in the appendix? Our intention had been to get some of the
it's in-
detailed information into an appendix. I don't recollect whether it's
Yeah, I think it
expanded
is.
on there.
I think so, I'd have to check.
Mm.
But it's in the text too, pretty much. I think there's enough about it in the text now. Between the text and the illustration.
Are we trying to put references in this document or is that all in the appendix? Because you have a reference down below on line 38 on the next page. I didn't know if you, this is such an important point, the ZOI.
Whom do we need for that?
I wonder if you want to, if you're putting references in.
I'm sure they're all
Here.
They're all short. I think 5 minutes.
Some places, yeah, Dan, I don't know if, do we have one in it? Yeah, I think that's the footnote. Maybe PDFs don't let us put footnotes in, so. Down on page 25, line 38 is a footnote.
But it's in a different section.
Yeah. It is. Yeah. That could be a footnoting goof. I only say that because it's references not in Ayler. I don't know if the VCD gets into that, to tell you the truth. So I don't know where that,
Well, I think the 330-foot thing came from the New Hampshire study, didn't it?
the 400 came from that.
Yeah.
And then,
I think we should, if we're gonna put citations, we should be consistent and or just put them all in the appendix or cite them as we go, but we shouldn't like cite some things and not other things.
well, the text says 330 to 400, so that's not in Ayler.
Yeah, so maybe just put that,
So there should be a
a
footnote.
footnote there before B
You might have been at one time.
Or a reference to the appendix.
Yeah.
I think
Yeah.
someone should check whether this is dealt with in the appendix, in which case we don't need to duplicate it here in the management section.
You mean the whole concept of the ZOI? Doesn't need to be,
Yeah, on the literature citations where, you know, where these numbers come from, I'm guessing I'm working from memory that it's probably in the appendix C, but
that the,
I don't know for sure. Someone should check on that rather than
I mean, getting away,
planning to duplicate material.
Well, let's make that a point, check.
Mhm.
I just wonder if, big picture, I feel like what you're trying to say here is that we looked at all of this information, the best literature that's out there, and we decided on 300 feet, right? And we don't really say that. We say could be 1,000, could be this, that, but I think we should say we used all of this. Here's what we know, here's what the science says, and here's what we decided. And then give the hard number that we're using, whether it's 300, 330, whatever it is. I mean, Meredith says 100 meters, which is 330 feet.
I think that's,
Would it be compromising to the spirit of the bylaws, recreation wise, to make it 1,000?
To make it 1,000,
As opposed to just 330?
triple it. It's hard to,
1,000 would leave you almost no
Opportunity.
unbuffered
That's kind,
tell you
land.
the truth,
that's what I'm wondering. Yeah.
it's hard enough with 300.
Okay.
If we apply that to the whole thing,
There'd be nothing
that's,
left.
that's how that north-south thing.
Okay.
It's, yeah.
and also the 1,000 is, yeah, considering certain species that may not even live in the area. I'd be like,
Elk.
yeah, exactly. Or like a moose, which like they wander in the spring like once or twice, but they don't really live in ACF. They just might happen upon it once in a while.
And I stand
100
corrected.
meters.
A quick scan of appendix C shows that most of the material there is about the hierarchy, the 3 levels identified in Vermont Conservation Design, I don't see any detailed information about zones of influence. So,
Okay.
you know, I stand corrected. Maybe this section in the B6, B5 section needs elaborating on zones of influence. If that's
I
what
think
people
it's pretty, I think if you take out the red, it's pretty clear what a zone of influence is.
Yeah.
I think Brad did a good job of explaining it. I think Dan's point is good, that we should apply a number that's, you know, clear and, whatever that number is, and can be pointed towards somewhere, whether that's Meredith Naughton's study or.
And explain that. Chosen.
Yeah.
That there are options.
Yep.
Yeah, that number is defensible because it's in the literature. Meredith cites it. It's consistently, it appears in multiple different articles and.
All right, timekeeper here. Is it the pleasure of the committee to stop at 8?
yes.
Okay. A minority members say stop at 8, okay. All right, we're stopping at 8.
I do have one more comment, or should I just put it in writing? Should I just write my comment and
To Brad and Ian. Brad's.
for the ecological section? Well, we
Talk about it there.
we could talk about there. Yeah, let's do that. Okay.
All right, we've got 4 minutes left. Can we leave this temporarily or leave this for now? We're gonna meet on the 14th and then we're gonna meet on the 28th. One of the items on the 28th is, it's kind of our annual meeting and historically, you had a chair for a year and a vice chair for a year. They were elected at the annual meeting. We made an adjustment a couple of years ago where we had co-chairs. So next month, 28th, we can decide, do we want to continue with the co-chair model or go to a chair and a vice chair? So be thinking about that.
What are the pros and cons? Give me the 20-second summary.
They both work. They both work. This is collaborative.
I've personally, I pushed really hard for having a co-chair. You know, I've sort of volunteered to take on some chair responsibilities, but with my hearing, I can't run a meeting, and so I do things more in the background and less during the meeting. So that's an individual situation. So if I cease to be a co-chair, then that goes away.
Right. And think about whether you'd like to be a co-chair or a chair and a vice chair or a vice chair. So that's next meeting, and that maybe will take 10 minutes and then we go back into editing and.
You're saying that's for the 14th or the 28th?
28th.
28th, okay.
Yep, 28th. And Ian and I will meet before the 28th.
Yeah.
And.
Is it
set the
clear
agenda.
what we do on the 14th?
Right. Yes, we're gonna edit on the 14th.
Yeah, so we don't need to meet to make an agenda. We know what the
Right.
agenda is.
Yeah.
So I'll also throw out for the 28th meeting, we might want to put on there, I think technically we're supposed to review the code of conduct stuff in a meeting, like we're required to do it, you know, so everyone should do their training, sign their code of conducts, and then we need to review it together in a meeting.
Either in July or August. I think it has to be done
I think
before
so.
September.
Yeah.
Is that
We'll bring
right?
those signed documents to this meeting as opposed.
I think you just-
Duncan?
No, well, I don't know. That's a good question. I just know we have to review it in the meeting together. I don't know if you need to bring the document to the meeting. I think you can sign it and email it. I believe in the past, that's what I've done, is just
I think-
emailed it to.
Duncan's email which I'm citing here is of March 21st, that spells it out, especially the attachment that he put.
Yes, yeah, if you just look.
We
back.
should, that's our point of reference for this.
So I'm happy to brush hog probably September. Lower
I
Meadow.
looked real quick, July 15th was what I read.
Okay,
So,
all right.
um,
I really feel uncomfortable driving through anybody's yard to go brush hogging, because it just opens it up, and I don't want to deteriorate the farm road further than it is. So my wish is for maybe a couple of us to meet. I'd like to put a little 6-foot wide trail off the utility road into the meadow, maybe 300 feet up the road in the least tippy spot, to get a tractor down in there and get Bruce's okay to cut the fence. And then in the future, that would be a gate, so that we don't have to go through your yard, and we can get in the meadow and with a piece of equipment and brush hog it. In the past, I've gone all the way around, go up the utility road and the vast trail. The vast trail in that section is really wet, and there's a gigantic tree across the vast trail that is, it's really too big for my chainsawing expertise. It's big. At some point, it'll crush itself down and it won't be that big, but it's
Oh, I see. So it hasn't completely hit the ground yet. It's just.
right. It's
up.
just big and
Widowmaker.
right.
Yeah.
So you're talking about, I mean, a tractor width road
Yes.
for 300 feet,
No. It would be, I think it's like 50 feet.
50 feet.
Yep.
To get from the,
Utility road into the western edge of the meadow.
so, oh gosh, it's hard
Have
to,
you done that before? It's tippy
Yes.
in there, okay.
Yep. Yep, it is tippy right there, but it's not tip over tippy. And I have a bucket, so I would just like smooth it out so I can get there. So that's my wish, to walk it with a couple of people to do that. So we have access this summer, but access in the future, use the same.
You can't go in Meadow Meander, doesn't matter.
No, there's a bridge there, and
Is it what?
there's a bridge.
Oh,
Yeah, there's almost immediately a bridge.
Yeah.
Yeah.
okay.
I'd be happy to go. I guess my immediate thought is there anything we need to do, like, to get permission to put that in? I mean, is that like, it's not very steep there, right? So it wouldn't trigger any of the zoning things, right? So, and it's not really, we're not really like trail building, or are we, I guess?
And this is a multi-use property,
Mhm.
so it's really jurisdiction is agricultural,
Right.
which
Okay.
which is exempt from local zoning.
Got it.
So if
Okay.
you really want to slice and dice, it's like logging is,
it's not agricultural though, right?
well, we're clearing a meadow, we're keeping a meadow open so that it can be used for agriculture.
Could
That's
it be
what-
used for recreation?
It could be used for recreation too.
So there you
Yes,
go.
right.
So then the jurisdiction is,
The town.
you gotta
Fine,
include
that's fine.
recreation, I mean,
Right,
I'm just saying, it's, you know,
right,
agricultural, yeah. Does mean something,
right.
so.
So
Yeah,
the-
no,
so
I
the-
think it's a great idea.
So the question is to have a couple people go look at it with you, and then for us to talk about it at the next meeting,
Yeah,
or,
it's fine, because I'm not doing anything until
yeah, August or September?
August or September, so I just want to get it on the calendar.
Yeah,
So that we can,
I'd be happy to go take a look. I mean, if it gives us something to talk about at our next meeting, whether that's on the 14th or the
Right.
28th.
and it won't take long.
Yeah.
The walk doesn't take long.
Yeah, it's
and
right by the gate.
Conversation doesn't take long.
Yeah,
You know about the electric power line, right? That drapes down. It was there to feed a fence. I don't know if it was the Andrews's or the Barbin or Beth and Bruce's, but there's a fence back there.
There is a fence, yeah. It's
An electric.
high tension fence, the electricity's off, but
Right,
yeah.
just to let you know that the wire is all over the place.
Yes.
It's droopy and.
Right,
Yeah.
yeah. So, all right, that's all I had. Yep. Thoughts? Anything else? Adjourn. Motion to adjourn.
Second.
I mean.